All right, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Welcome to Polish Business Hub Davos. We're having a fantastic conversation today. You are going to love it. All the names are behind me. I am going to peek behind just to read all of it, because there's so much text here, but I'll be very quick, right? The title of the panel today, the conversation today, is Bridging Academia and Industry, Advancing AI Development and Commercialization. And boy, do we have some challenges and some interesting, great stories, but also terrible stories there. I'm joined by fantastic people here. To my direct left is Eric Brynjolfsson. Eric Brynjolfsson is a professor, and Jerry Yang and Akiko Yamazaki professor, as well as senior fellow Stanford Institute for Human-Centered AI, big fan, director of the Stanford Digital Economy Lab. Next to him, Professor Alojzy Nowak, rector of University of Warsaw, second in computer science in Europe right now, right? Absolutely fantastic, congratulations. Then we have Sylvia Consalva-Tilana, CEO Auctionomics, co-founded Auctionomics with a Nobel Prize laureate. We'll talk about it. Congratulations, great stories there as well. And then we have Jovan Protic, VP of the Management Board, Ringier Axel Springer Polska. Fantastic stories of collaborations with universities that we'll be unpacking as well. Myself, my name is Marek Kołakowicz, professor and chair in digital economy at Queensland University of Technology Business School. All right, so let's talk about industry-academia collaboration. Now, one of our panelists is going to have to leave a bit earlier, it's sort of halfway through the panel. This gentleman right next to me, Eric, right? Eric, again. Now, we're sorry to hear that, but that means that we're going to drill or grill Eric a bit more at the very beginning. We'll still have a conversation, everyone, and then we'll let him go, right? Eric, you've done quite a lot when it comes to industry-academia collaboration. I remember back in 2012, you talked about it today. You went to Silicon Valley to sort of explore what was happening in the industry space there. Your lab produces amazing academics, and then they're being bought out by all the sort of AI labs. To the untrained eye, it looks like industry-academia collaboration in the AI world means we're gonna buy all of your PhDs, hire them, and they will do the research in-house, so like in-sourcing industry-academia collaboration. Is this the case? Prove me that I'm wrong, or join that bandwagon of crying with me.
Well, that's certainly a huge problem, especially at Stanford. It's become much worse recently, of course, especially in AI and machine learning, but just starting perhaps, well, about 10 years ago, it started accelerating. Economists are also becoming more and more in demand. Hal Varian, I think, was one of the first, amazing academic who became chief economist at Google, Susan Athey at Microsoft, and a whole set of other tech companies started doing it. So it's not just the machine learning people, it's them as well. And of course, industry generally can pay a lot higher salaries, so it's not sustainable if no PhDs stay and become professors. But I think it'll ultimately be a new equilibrium established, and we'll see how it balances. But it's been costly, not just for the students, by the way, it's been costly for the faculty. I mean, I came to Stanford to work with Fei Li and many others, but she started Stanford High, Institute for Human-Centered AI, and now she's 90% working on her own company as well, so she's not around as much either. The lure, not necessarily just money, but the ability to really make a big impact in the world through industry is very large.
And that's certainly challenging. So Sylvia, I wanted to ask about your perspective. So you have co-founded Auctionomics with Paul Milgrom, the laureate for Nobel Prize. So it's an interesting way. You kind of one leg in the academia, one leg in the industry. How does it work for you? Do you see yourself working with academics who are still within the academic world, or do you try to extract them and bring them into industry? How does collaboration look in your case?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. So actually, the collaboration is fantastic because we have like a lot of Stanford faculty and faculty around the world that works with us. And what happens is we apply theoretical model in the real world. So all of you now, for example, stream movies on your phone rather than flipping channels, mainly because one of our auctions, the incentive auction. And then the things that we find out by doing business projects become academic papers. And so it's a loop of constant improvement between academia, business, and academia. And we work with a lot of computer scientists as well.
All right, so you're slightly more optimistic, right? It seems like it's working in your case,
Working
right?
great in our case, yes.
But just to be clear, I'm very optimistic.
All right, okay, all right. Maybe it's just me, right?
I mean, what I described is a problem,
Yeah.
but the benefits are orders of magnitude greater.
So I think this is an interesting segue to what I wanted to ask Aloyse about. So Aloyse, not a lot of people know just yet that a lot of graduates of your university end up in Silicon Valley, and are placed in absolutely massive startups, right? So you look at OpenAI. I don't know the percentage, but a significant percentage of OpenAI, PhDs or researchers as well as leaders are actually coming from a university, right? So how do you see this?
Yes, it's true. I mean, a huge, quite big number of the people who graduated from the University of Warsaw, they went to California, either to Stanford or Berkeley, or East Coast universities. They got their PhDs and they were offered a job, and they stay just now in Silicon Valley. Some of them teach, some of them do research, some of them do both, teaching, research, and cooperating with the business. And the University of Warsaw has been cooperating to some extent, and not only we, with Silicon Valley, I will say, for the last 20, 25 years. But finally, we decided, having such big number of people in Silicon Valley, but also because of our colleagues, professors from Stanford, from UCLA and Berkeley, we decided to open a center which is going to support both research and business, and also those, our graduates and our colleagues who are Poles or Polish Americans who decided to stay in Silicon Valley and who are still willing to cooperate with our universities and with our businesses. We are giving them also the chance to give the possibility of our American colleagues to make contacts, to start to invest in startups in Poland, in Warsaw, but not only in Warsaw. And I would say that the cooperation is going pretty well. So I am pleased that you said that you are optimistic about development, the circles within the Silicon Valley, and we are pleased in particular just now because, as you said, we are number 2 in Europe in terms of artificial intelligence and
Congratulations
and computer sciences, and Stanford and MIT for a long time in competition in algorithmics and in mathematical competition were our competitors for a long time.
Yeah.
So we feel almost at home. However, the competition is extremely strong.
It's been a big topic in this space, the sort of the impact of diaspora and collaboration. And what I'm hearing here is the sort of the different type of diaspora, right? There's this sort of the academic diaspora that moves to industry, but then we're asking, hey, how can we still collaborate, work together? Jovan, we had a bit of a chat downstairs about your exploration now of AI and how this those new technologies might be applied in your business, and so you're looking now for academic partners, you're looking for organizations to work with. What is your experience in this space?
I mean, obviously, I represent media sector and like publishing industry, and again, like several years ago with the digital transformation, we are probably one of the most disrupted sectors, basically, with the appearance of generative AI. And when we started, and obviously due to that, we immediately jumped on a topic, when we saw what ChatGPT is doing and how big effect this might have on our industry. But honestly, in this first momentum, we were looking around, we couldn't really find, good support on the academia side, speaking on the markets where we have our presence, to kind of implement different applied AI solutions in our day-to-day business. Yeah? So we went for 2 complementary solutions, I would say, that we had to build on our own. One was that we'll build AI Academy ourselves, where we found around the market professionals who were really having a vast experience in implementing AI and having effects of using it. And on the other hand, the company or the board of Axel Springer globally, they asked me to travel to Silicon Valley and spend some 6 months over there talking to universities, to Stanford, among others, to Berkeley, to the big tech, to the AI startups, so all the representatives of AI ecosystem over there, try to understand basically, how AI is going to influence media, what partnerships we might have with those companies, and then come back basically and work on a strategy of the whole group. So there was a solution until now, but I think now maybe I just don't have enough knowledge of what is possible, when it comes to cooperation with for example, Polish academic institutions. But so far we didn't have success in this kind of cooperation.
So let's talk about what is possible and what success looks like. There was one word that you used that triggered my thinking: complementarity. And Eric, you talk about complementary goods, about substitutes. You're an economist. You're a world-renowned expert in labor productivity, in knowledge translation. We're looking at, and right now you work with in a team that focuses a lot on foundation models. Now, some of the most recent foundation models, there are quite substantial claims that they're as good as PhDs in various areas, right? We can have a bit of a discussion about it, what exactly this means, but we're kind of at this stage where perhaps the likes of Jovan could ask themselves, as a business, do I need to engage with a university that has, people with sort of PhD training and the expertise, or do I just look into AI and and that's the substitute? What is your take on it, Eric?
Well, there are definitely things that the machines can do as well or better than humans, and there are things that humans do better. And I think you used the right word, complementarity, that often when one part of that system gets cheaper or better, it makes the other parts more valuable. So to be very concrete, I think that it's rarely a zero sum or tension. I came from MIT, and we have a Latin motto, mens et manus, and those of you who speak Latin know that means mind and hand. And I think it underscores my philosophy, which is MIT's, and I think it should be everyone's philosophy, that rigor and relevance or mind and hand are not opposites. They're not like a tension. And business and academia are not two different ends of the spectrum. When they're most successful, they work together and they complement each other. And if a technology is able to do something well, then a human researcher can often complement that in other different ways. I mean, to give you a more concrete example, I've done a lot of research, as you mentioned, on understanding how to turn technology into productivity. What are the factors that do that? And I get asked, honestly, by a lot of CEOs, a lot of executives, to advise them and to give talks or whatever. And I write books about this, like Second Machine Age. And that was helpful and it was somewhat satisfying. But in the end, they can only learn so much from a paper or a talk. So we decided to start a company called Work Helix, which takes this methodology and puts it into software and makes it accessible. So this academic research now is turbocharged by having a business platform, by having software, just like what Sylvia's doing with the auction theory that she and Paul Milgram and others have developed. Well, maybe mostly Paul. So I think that, it goes both ways, as I think people have been mentioning. The insights from business then make the research better. I spend most of my time in a business school. I also have an appointment in economics. I think often I have an unfair advantage over other economists because they sit in their office, they close the doors and windows, and they try to imagine why the business is doing something or what's going on with these customers. Well, unlike physicists who can't talk to atoms, we can go and talk to the subjects of our research. So I go out and I talk to business executives and say, what's going on here? Can you explain this to me? And often it has nothing at all to do with the theories that economists come up with. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. And so this is a big advantage, and it makes it much more likely that when I do write theories down and when I do empirical research, it's focused on things that are actually really happening in the real world. So there you see it going in both directions. You see that the academic research powering better businesses and creating more value for companies. And you also see that the company insights leading to better academic research. So this long-standing tension of this animosity that I see among some business executives and some academics towards the other side, it has to end. I think that's one of the biggest myths, is that these are opposites. The reality is that done right, they're complements.
So it's not a spectrum; it's more of a spiral. Something that sort of brings us all
Like a helix,
like
a helix of work.
There you go. That's why we call it work helix. No, that's smart. Eric, so everyone, just like I promised, I'm going to grill Eric a tiny bit more. Mikołaj, we're going to introduce you in a second here.
Then you will be great.
We're going to pass the baton here.
That's right.
Pass the mic.
That's right. Eric, I still wanted to talk a tiny bit about foundation models. So that includes large language models, generative AI in principle. What is your take on the potential of those relatively new technologies when it comes to reimagining, reshaping that industry academia helix collaboration?
Yeah. So no question, the technology is advancing very rapidly, surprising Jeff Hinton and almost everyone who I've talked to. Jan LeCun, I'm having dinner with. We've talked about how rapidly things are advancing. And one way to think about it is that machine learning is very good at data where at problems where there's a lot of data. So things that are repetitive. And if you think of a Pareto curve, like a long tail curve, there's the very common questions, and then there's a long tail of questions that are very uncommon. Machines are better at the ones that come repeatedly. And humans, while we're not great at it, we can actually handle exceptions reasonably well. So there's a division of labor there, but us doing with the unusual, the exceptions, and machines doing better at things where there's lots of data. That line is moving over time, and it is getting to be extremely, genius level. Dario Amodei has a great metaphor. He says we're approaching a world where you could put a country of geniuses on a data center. And I think that's a good way to think about the technology that's coming soon. And then the big challenge for us in academia, especially economists, but really everybody, is to think about, okay, what are the scarce complements to this new abundant good? It doesn't necessarily do everything, but it does a lot of things. And so if you can identify those bottlenecks, those complements, not only do you still have a job, you have an incredibly valuable job, one that's turbocharged. And just to end on a little note of optimism about that, technology has always been advancing, and people have always been worrying about technology replacing work. And it's always been replacing work and creating work. But the overall trend has overwhelmingly been towards complements. You used the word first, not substitutes. And one way to see that is what's happened to wages. 100 years ago, 200 years ago, people made 1/50th per hour what we do. So an hour of human labor is much more valuable now. Why is that? Well, because we have technology that complements us, that makes us much more valuable. So the technology has not driven down our wages or our demand, it's mostly driven up. Now, I can't guarantee that will always happen, but I do see a trend in the next few years at least where we do see a lot of complementarities.
It's amazing. And if you try to learn from the past, you've obviously researched that, all industrial revolution and written books about how industrial revolution has changed the society. I feel like we are at this stage that is similar to the steam engine being replaced by an electric motor, and we're still only seeing those one-to-one links to to what we have been doing and what is replacing.
Yeah, that's a key thing to bear in mind is that the technology by itself, all these wondrous things that can do PhD level math exams or whatever, that's useless to most companies until it gets translated into something. Yeah. With the electric motor you're alluding to, it took about 20 to 30 years before those electric motors turned into productivity. Mm-hmm. And today, if I took that country of geniuses that Dario Amodei has, and I said, okay, I'm going to give it to the local grocery store across the street. You now have a bunch of Einsteins working for you. Mm. I think they're going to say, well, can they sweep the floor? I mean, can they stock the shelves? I mean, what are they going to do? Maybe they can come up with a slightly better pricing algorithm or something. I don't know, but it's not a first order improvement until you rethink the business. Simply cool technology by itself has little value.
Excellent, Eric. Thank you so much for this. Now, I know you'll need to leave in a few minutes. I give you the permission to drop the mic and stand up whenever you hear something that you grossly disagree with, or else. Mikołaj.
Actually, it was all right. I'm going to head out now.
All right. Thank you so much, Eric.
Thanks
Yeah.
sorry about that, guys. I'm just a little overscheduled.
Thanks so much, Eric. Thank you. All right, Mikołaj, baton to you, and then we're going to do a lot more discussion. Mikołaj, you're a co-founder and general partner, Expeditions Fund. What I found really interesting is that that's a deep tech fund, right? So you deeply rely on insights, academic insights, and so on. One leg in industry, the other leg, assistant professor in AI law and regulation, Surrey Institute for People-Centered AI. Why? Why not both legs in one area? And after Mikołaj will have answered this question, I want us all to start sharing more stories about collaboration, if possible. So you can start thinking about them. We'll have a more kind of light discussion.
Thank you very much for inviting me, and sincere apologies for coming late. It's a great pleasure to be here. Coming straight to your question, I guess, we all have two legs if we are lucky, so I just wanted to use my well. And it was just a concatenation of fortunate circumstances in my life. First of all, I started off pursuing very much research interest without having any degree of application in real world. And I was really passionate with philosophy and so forth. And then suddenly I got to the public sector, and that was my first proper job. Was really inspired by public policies, how really poorly we devised them in Poland. And therefore I applied to Oxford. I actually met Professor Brynjolfsson during some of the lectures, did PhD there, where I was looking at the application of AI in autonomous weapon systems in early days, between 2016 and 2018. So early that in the UK at that time the official policy on autonomous weapon systems was that these weapon systems will likely never exist, because they will need to be self-aware. That was literally the policy of the UK government back then. So I went over there to the United States and did my empirical research with the US Air Force Research Lab and policy division of the US DoD. And then at the same time, I got a very interesting relationship with a venture investor from the US who helped me to sponsor my studies, because I was actually not having enough money at that time to actually pursue these studies. So I had to do my first private fundraising, did that. He supported me, I supported then him. And then suddenly, after I graduated from Oxford, he offered me a job, but I was still interested in these academic issues. And then suddenly I found myself in 2020 thinking that, okay, I have some experience in venture capital. I have this weird interest in AI autonomous weapon systems, and it looks like all these things are coming together. And then war in Ukraine was a big catalyst for me personally and for the company. Yeah. And we've raised the fund before the war. Then we managed to invest, because we had only private capital, we managed to invest in 20 companies, many of them defense and intelligence first companies all across Europe, many of them in the UK. I've been very fortunate with track record, and then we've raised a bigger fund, which we are now deploying into new companies. The focus of Expeditions Fund is very much the investments into the future of security. And personally, because that's very much driven by my academic interest, I consider my job also as a mission, where I can contribute a little bit to the wider deterrence in Europe.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Mikołaj. All right, so this is where I promised, where I just want to have a slightly lighter discussion. Please feel free to interrupt one another. Don't wait for me to ask questions. Also, in the audience, start thinking about some questions that you want to ask the panel. I'm really interested, that's sort of the general vibe of the next part of the discussion is, I'm really interested in what is your biggest challenge in that sort of theme of the panel, right? Bridging academia and industry, but also what are you the most proud of, right? To have a bit of a balanced view. Who would like to start on this one? Sylvia?
Sure, why not?
Right. Go for it.
Well, for us, I don't know how many of you are familiar with the incentive auction. So at some point, like television had radio frequency that they didn't need anymore because the television technology had changed. And so we were tasked with the task of like getting it back from television stations and flipping it to the AT&T and Verizon of the world, which is the mobile operators. But the government didn't have $20 billion to just go buy it. And so we had to somehow get offers to buy and offers to sell without knowing how much we would clear. And it was mathematically very complex because there was a lot of interference constraints, 1.2 million interference constraints. The computer scientists would tell us it was not possible to find a solution within like 5 days of each optimization, and we had to run hundreds of them. So we hired a very advanced team of computer scientists, and my co-founder had this great algorithm, and we had to do like some very complex math that was experimental even from an academic point of view, and then deployed in the real world in this $19 billion auction. And so it was a complete collaboration of inventing completely new things from an academic point of view and deploying them in a real world auction where also the mom and pops that own television station had to bid, so it had to look super simple on the outside. So like a Ferrari, nice and elegant on the outside, all the complexity under the hood. So that was the quintessential experimentation of like new academic discoveries applied to real world to an auction that affected all Americans. So I think that's what we're most proud of. In fact, they gave us an Emmy in technology for that.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that sounds pretty impressive. Congratulations on this one. Thank you, Sylvia. Aloisa.
You know, question is simple, but the answer is not such simple because we don't have one word. Generally speaking, when we are talking about strong cooperation between research, academia, and businesses, it's rather Anglo-Saxon model and American model. There was no such tradition in Europe. When I look at Poland and the University of Warsaw, and we have been strongly cooperating with some very good universities here in Europe, Heidelberg, Sorbonne, Copenhagen, Milano, and Geneva University and Charles University. So we are very much ahead in terms of cooperation with businesses. They are much more conservative. However, it doesn't mean that it's easy to cooperate with the businesses. It also depends who is the president or who is the rector of the university, because we used to have in the past hard sciences researchers, mathematicians, physicists, chemists, etc. And 10, 15, even maybe 7 years ago, they were very far from business. They were not very much interested in business. And on the other side, the business was not very much interested in cooperation with universities because they usually said they have been doing something what is not very important, we don't need, they don't understand the business, etc., etc. But in recent time, maybe also because of becoming part of the European Union, but mostly I would say because of cooperation with many good American universities, situation has changed. And I am also an economist and financist. So I think that I understand better the need of the cooperation. It's good that we are talking about that because Minister of Higher Education of Poland is sitting here in the classroom. So hopefully he will be he will be supporting some of these ideas. But but it's still, I am criticized, for example, advising one of the companies or being on supervisory board.
As in conflict of interest or why? Why are you being criticized?
There is no conflict of interest.
Yeah.
People are asking the question how rector of big and best university, at least in Poland, can be on supervisory
share
board.
his knowledge with others.
Well,
Okay.
but they say they think he should concentrate on university, and that is all. On the other side, I would like to say that also, I mean, if you look at the universities, comprehensive universities, you have places, you have faculties, which are very much interested in applied research. And there are also faculties or centers which are not very much pure mathematics, for example, or pure philosophy, etc., etc. So you have to change, or you have to different approach to the people to try to convince them, to explain them, to talk with them, etc., etc. And this same is on the other side. So just now we are in the position that we better understand each other. And here is also President of Orlen. I saw him, and with Orlen we have been cooperating extremely well. I mean, Orlen has been supporting many researchers and many faculties at Warsaw University, giving stipends. Even they have been supporting PhD students at Stanford University.
Excellent.
So the world has been changing. There is no one good probably solution, but
Nice,
let
nice.
you know.
So what I'm hearing is the sort of the external perception sometimes impacts how we collaborate, but also the mindset on both ends. That's really interesting. We tap into some of those as we go. Jovan, you've already shared some of your, you're looking for opportunities, you're looking for organizations to work with. But still, what is the answer to my question? What's the biggest challenge? What's the something you're most excited about?
I mean, maybe there's a problem of perception of what can I and our company expect from academia. Yeah, because like somehow when I think of a need, I mean, our need as a media company is like, how we can produce better quality content, how we can produce better investigative stories with the help of AI, how we can find correlations between multiple data sets and find hidden corruption schemes, and augment our journalists to do better journalistic work.
Well, Sylvia could help with some of this.
How, but then on the other hand, how we can now with the help of AI, go into different geographies, like now with AI and this fantastic AI translation, even video translation, I could imagine that, a Polish reporter doing report from the Geneva Motor Show could be also translated into fluent Mandarin, and we could be publishing that video in Japan. Yeah. So why I'm mentioning all these examples, because these examples are not complex; they are just creative. And what we do not need to train the models. We don't need to develop large language models of our own. We don't need to do complex fine tuning. We actually need creativity and very concrete business ideas around our branch.
Love it.
And honestly, I don't know if the universities in Poland, maybe they are educating their students around this very concrete applied AI topics and think how to think creatively to apply what's already existing to generate new value on top of it.
Love it. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a reason why there's no word of moderator next to my name. I'm not just a moderator. I spent about 10 years in academia working with industry. Before that, I worked in industry working with academia the other way around. So when Sylvia asked me to come on stage, she said, you need to be part of this conversation. So this is where I'm going to be part of this conversation, Jovan, because at my university at QUT, we've actually designed a process called reverse pitch. And a reverse pitch is where an industry partner comes to our university and pitches a problem or a set of problems to a group of academics, right? And it's reverse because normally we would expect academics to go to industry and say, here, I have a solution. Do you have a problem for that solution, right? We know that. So a reverse pitch is something that, if I were based in Poland, I would immediately invite you to my university and say, let's do that, right? I'm going to bring, I'm going to bring representatives from various faculties. You'll tell them what your problems are, and then we'll have a chat. We see what comes out, right? You'll find out whether the university can help. That's my contribution before we go.
We should anyhow do it.
Yeah, let's do it. Mikołaj, what are you most proud of? What are your biggest challenges?
No, that's great. I am most proud of on a personal level with the fact that we helped quite meaningfully one company that spun it off from the University of Cambridge Cavendish Lab in quantum networking. So think like networking in classical computers is pretty much what Cisco is doing. So they are trying to build like Cisco for quantum computers. And the company was struggling a lot at that time because somehow, even though they had actually very good Cambridge based investors, they didn't believe at that company at that particular moment of time. And we've been crazy enough actually to invest at that time. But when you look at the fundamentals of the business, the technology, in my view, it was world class. It wasn't that crazy after all. But they just, the investors were too conservative in the UK, and they didn't really pull the trigger that much. So we let the run, and then suddenly the business grew 10 times. Actually, now they've partnered with Cisco. They received a very substantial contract in the UK, and they have become a national champion in the UK in a very short period of time, actually in 2 years since our investment. Now they are valued over $200 million. When we invested, it was order of magnitude lower than that. So that's on a personal level. I have also one other experience at the University of Oxford where when I was working for an American firm, I've managed to convince the founder of that firm, which was a wealthy individual from the US, to actually donate to the university several £1 million to create the new center of technology and global affairs. That's how we call it. It's still part of the University of Oxford Department of Politics and International Relations. And what that was really was very simple. We noticed that there is lots of interest from academia in technical elements of what is happening in machine learning, robotics, and so forth. There's lots of interest from a business standpoint, but actually very rarely academics at that time focused on how these technologies actually impact geopolitics. And specifically, just to give you one example, how one country, small country like Estonia, can adopt specific technologies, here cyber technologies, for instance, to boost the standing of its own relative to other countries. And Estonia is a phenomenal example. Since 90s, obviously, they adopted very early cyber technologies. They increased the competitiveness of the country by far. And now, obviously, they missed the AI wave. However, they would like to reposition themselves again by being a hub of the defense tech companies. It's very one example of how technologies could be seen through geopolitical lenses. But I would like to refer a little bit, if I can, to what Professor Novak said and my other interlocutors. Namely, I think the biggest problem in Polish context specifically is that there is no ecosystem as of yet to spin a specific type of IP out of the university and then have a soft landing in a way. We have various elements of our science, not just in Warsaw, but more generally across the country, where we are, I think, cutting edge in one of the leading positions in some specific subsets, for instance, of computer vision, cryptography, and so forth. However, or even in radar systems in defense or national security. However, the big problem is then when you have a unique piece of IP, then researchers don't know how to take that IP from the university, what even the rules are, if there are any rules there, and then convert that IP into a meaningful business idea that could attract interest of investors. And then we don't have enough investors who are actually taking a serious look at deep tech companies, and they know how to do it, take this IP from the university, help the funders in a professional way. We've got too many deep tech investors in Poland who weren't professional enough, in my view. And they couldn't help those businesses, they hurt them a lot.
All right. Discuss. Sylvia, I don't know how much you know about Polish ecosystem and you know how to run a startup in Poland. I'm assuming you don't know a lot, but you've spun off your correct me if I'm wrong. You've spun off your business in Stanford, right? Is that correct or?
Well, I was a Stanford student at the time,
Yeah.
but there's not a direct Stanford affiliation. It's just a lot of faculty works with us. Yes.
Geographically,
Yeah.
that area, right?
Yeah.
This is not a question of how do we build another Silicon Valley, right? This is not this question. The question is, what could we learn from your experience? You know, what would, if you were the president of Poland, and you could sign
Having dinner with him later.
There you go. You could sign one executive order. So I don't know if we can sign executive orders in Poland, but let's imagine you can. I don't think you can. Let's imagine you can. What would you recommend the president to do?
President of Poland is not such influential person.
That's all right. It's a purely hypothetical. We're more interested in the insight of what's on the paper.
Hypothetically speaking, is if the Polish system is similar to the Italian system where, and I'm not sure, like you guys have to answer the question, but let's say it was like Italy. So in Italy, actually, if you are a professor in academia, you're actually not allowed to do too much business on the side. So how is that in Poland? Is that allowed or not?
What we just heard. Like
Yes.
No, it has changed. No, it's not the same.
It's not the same, I would say.
All right. So that's the first thing you would say, like, you know, make sure that there's...
I think allowing a lot of interaction and also having a lot of like business speakers come into academia and like showing the applications, I think that makes it a very good feedback loop.
Did you have investors who truly understood your business?
We did not allow any investors.
Oh, okay. You bootstrapped. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so we started when the treasury was on the phone with my co-founder and John Levin, who's now the president of Stanford University, because they wanted to run an auction for the distressed assets. Treasury, that was like, and we bootstrapped that one. And then the auction didn't happen, but we started the company. So we never took outside investors.
I'm gobsmacked. Honestly, and
Yeah, and
you know.
I think that's I think if you have outside investors, probably they want you to find one thing that you can scale and apply it on many different fields. Whereas what we do is we fine tune every time, and so with a lot of academic innovation. So that's not a model that big investors would probably like as much.
All right. I think that's that's not an executive order, but that's a really interesting insight. Thank you for this one.
You know, I want to comment what Mikołaj said a little bit. Fortunately, he described very properly the situation, but at the moment means for the 2-3 years, situation has been changing as well. And one of the reasons is, and we are very proud, because our graduates have been influencing also the system of higher education and of businesses. Fortunately, University of Warsaw, but not only University of Warsaw, we have at least 10, 15 very good universities and technical universities. They became very successful on international markets. Successful not only in reaching degrees, but also becoming or having success, business success. We have only among the graduates of Warsaw University at least 20 billionaires. And they have been influential people because they have something to say. One guy who graduated from my faculty, Panasonic, co-owner of Panasonic. So at least 6 billion of US dollars or euros since 2005. So it's good guy. So this shows when you were asking about the success of the university, or not exactly my personal success, one of the biggest successes is that we help the students to become someone. That we did not do anything wrong, and the people are successful in computer sciences, in mathematics, in chemistry, but also in social sciences. So just now the situation has been changing because they are coming to the universities, they are asking to the professors whom they knew that the professors could they teach something, and they have been doing or creating certain combination of stronger cooperation between business and research. So this is the future, I think. But and one sentence I didn't want to forget. You know, comprehensive universities are not only about adjusting to the present situation. They have to have also time and space about thinking about the future.
Yeah, of course, absolutely.
Discussion. So not everything we can immediately
Absolutely.
Put into
So,
the business.
what I'm hearing in this conversation, though, absolutely fantastic story, right? So it looks like we have amazing stories. Also looks like we're absolutely terrible at storytelling, because we just heard from Jovan that he's not really sure, which university could help him and how, right? And so we should be doing, I'm not even saying could, we should be doing a much better job at storytelling, at showcasing those examples and, talking up those absolute, did you say 20 billionaires, right? Yeah, that sounds good. I would send my kids to a school.
Could be 1,000, but
yeah, absolutely. Jovan, any thoughts about this one? You kind of, you're looking at this conversation, right, from the outside, as in,
I mean,
microphone.
what you mentioned,
Jovan.
if you would have all the power in Poland, I very much agree. I think that there was hardly any professor at Stanford that I met during last year that didn't have some startup side in AI space, yeah, and some of those really successful companies, and I guess this enables them to go on the market, spend time with the customers, see how it is to sell that, convince, understand their challenges, bring that back to university. So it's kind of and this really works. And if something like this doesn't exist in Poland, and Mr. Minister is here, That's a
All
great
right.
message.
All right, that's a message to the minister, right? We need an additional KPI or maybe a goal for our academics, which is let's see how many academics become founders, right? You know, of businesses. At my university, that is a well-expressed KPI, right? And we have goals, and we say, you know, this is how many founders we want to produce this year, how many founders we want to produce that year. So then, you know, the university system is adopted in such a way that it supports that, right? So absolutely fantastic. I wanted to give a chance for the audience to provoke us, right? Is there something that triggers you? Is there something that you deeply disagree with, or maybe you're just deeply curious? Does anyone have a question that they wanted to ask? It's a question in the middle. Yes, the lady here. Yeah, yeah. Yes, yes.
Right, thank you very much for a super nice discussion. So I'm an academic myself, and I bridge academia, research, and business. So I've worked with over 20 companies. I've also had purely academic projects with industry partners, despite the fact that I work as an academic. And here comes my question, because my main experience is Switzerland and Singapore. And I could go on with the discussion of what are the main obstacles with doing this type of collaborations. But two main obstacles that I see in Singapore is the fact that there is lack of decisiveness. So everybody is a manager, but nobody takes decision to say yes.
In Singapore.
It's Singapore. Okay. And in Switzerland, the main problem is that we would like to have access to real life data. And quite often actually in 99% of the cases, we don't have that access. So we have to generate it experimentally through collecting our own things. And in the end, it's never as good as the real life data. So maybe I'm missing something out, because I work in Switzerland at ETH Zurich, but maybe I'm missing out. Maybe there is something in Poland that companies would be willing to share data, and also would be willing to pull the trigger more easily than in Singapore.
I can answer the latter bit about Switzerland to some extent. Actually, the problem of having access to data, particularly data from sensitive places such as hospitals, medical clinics, and so forth, is widespread across the European Union, and including Switzerland. And that is something that is one of the bit that apparently keeps us a little bit down relative to other countries, particularly United States and so forth, when it comes to the development of AI. However, from Switzerland, there was a company called Decentric that was one of the first efforts using confidential computing to actually share data confidentially between places such as hospitals, clinics, and so forth, without actually those places seeing the queries and by identifying data. However, they are not doing well for the reasons that in Switzerland it's very difficult actually to build early stage company from scratch in this place, because they were trying to sell to big pharma companies. Big pharma companies were having long sales cycles and so forth. However, a company with a Polish funder did exactly the same a year later, and actually progressing very well. By applying confidential computing to share sensitive data in Europe. It's called Oblivious, and it's one of the, it's not yet like big success story, but it's on a very good growth trajectory to be one of the interesting success stories in Europe with a Polish co-founder. Then we have another company with a Polish co-founder applying different type of privacy enhancing technology, federated learning, but building in Stanford in the United States. It's called Segment. So I think in this particular space, there are already a class of technologies broadly defined as privacy enhancing technologies that actually can solve these problems of data exchange. The problem is that the awareness of the customers and end users is relatively poor, that these capabilities do exist. So that obviously is a challenge to sell these capabilities effectively, but they already exist, and few companies, and maybe those with Poles on board, might be successful.
Interesting.
I fully agree with what you said, and hopefully this, at least to a large extent, the answer to your question. The situation is even more complicated also, because we have in higher education private institutions, private universities, and public universities and public schools. And we have also private business, less still developed, and public business. So to go deeply, we should also define what kind of business or between what institutions the cooperation is going on. Because, I mean, sometimes going very close is very difficult. I mean, for private business is much easier to finance some research and cooperation, etc. However, private business still in Poland is not such, is small, not such rich. And public businesses are much bigger, but they have a lot of regulations and they are not very much willing to invest money which cannot be returned, or the return must be difficult.
Thank you. Any other questions? We're going to take one more question and then I'll have another question to the panel. There was one at the back, the gentleman with this beautiful hat. There.
I mean, the benefits of AI is there for everyone to see. We don't need further convincing in terms of even from a climate crisis perspective, the solutions, understanding the problem as well as coming up with solutions around that. In terms of AI and its development as well as commercialization standpoint, I would like to ask the esteemed panel, is sustainability something that you've sort of taken into consideration, or what are some of the steps you may advocate in terms of looking at its environmental impact and having certain sort of checks and balances in finding the balance to how we progress that conversation?
Sylvia, do you use a lot of those sort of power-hungry AI systems in your organization?
Well, but also connected to the environment.
Yeah, I
Specifically,
think my
Yeah.
understanding is that we're talking about those generative AI systems that the training takes a lot of energy, and that will have an environmental impact if we're having to produce that energy.
Yeah, so we actually train our own language models on our own information that we feed in, because otherwise it's garbage in, garbage out. So we do a lot with AI, and I think your concern was because that will use too much energy to run all of this AI. Yes, I think I probably agree with you, but I think there's a lot of small companies that try to use the small nuclear reactors at night to use those language models processing during the nighttime to offload that. So to use base load that otherwise wouldn't be used. So if we manage to go in that direction, then perhaps we can solve that problem.
Thank you, Sylvia. Now, we have just a few minutes to go. I'm going to give each of you executive powers, $300 billion, and then you have to call it Project Portal because Stargate is already taken, or just one wish. And we're talking about advancing AI development and commercialization. If you had that one wish to be granted, or a massive amount of funding, right, make it $300 billion, what would you do first? Aloisi.
I was expecting
on the spot.
that I will be the last one. It's a good question. Number one, I would let the students, PhD students and professors who are interested in doing their own businesses to start their own businesses. I would undertake this risk, and I would make this kind of the decision.
Thank you. Sylvia.
Solve water scarcity.
All right.
So we think we have a market design solution to water scarcity, because it's a misallocation of resources. It's not just there's not enough water. So we think we can use auctions and AI to solve water scarcity.
Excellent. Thanks, Sylvia. Yavan.
I think that there were too many people probably left behind during this AI transition. So I would probably, as a proper philanthropist, I would invest this money to educate the whole world about how to use AI and be better, whatever, employees, more productive, do more with
Love it.
with less time.
Fantastic. Mikołaj.
I have to add one more.
Yeah. Okay, you get. Okay.
I would probably use that power to force all the big tech to sit on a table with publishers and media companies and make sure to find like sustainable business model that would enable the whole media ecosystem to strive and do a good job, and make sure that we will still have Western democracies in place, because if this doesn't happen, I think that we might all see a lot of chaos in the years to come.
Excellent.
Well, it depends where that money should be spent, right? I think through the lenses of Poland, but I'm not sure if we are referring to Poland or more generally to Europe, US, our alliance, and so forth. When it comes to the wider alliance, US, Europe, I would say that investments in underlying data infrastructure, and this is actually what happened with Donald Trump, so I'm not saying something new, but actually what is needed is the innovation at the level of how we can generate less compute and do more with that. This is one of the big challenges, how we can train machine learning models more effectively. And then in transitioning to these innovations, we need to have the infrastructure that can sustain these large language models, so that they require lots of GPU power. This is on the wider level. And then on the more Polish, taking the Polish perspective, I would say that we have, as I said, clusters of excellence in science. And I think additional funding, I'm not sure if we need 300 billion. And I think, frankly, I don't think even we need any money at all, because that money could be taken from, for instance, pension funds, activating them to be a little bit more proactive, entrepreneurial, investing in venture funds, creating the ecosystem. Probably don't even need that money, frankly. But if we have money, we can spend that targeting the centers of excellence and building the centers of entrepreneurship around them to help them to transmit IP and build more companies. And then if we just be patient, in 10, 20 years, we should have many great companies.
That's wonderful. Ladies and gentlemen, I hadn't shared any of those questions with the panelists. They're as surprised by those questions as I am. So I was also thinking, how would I answer this question? Probably don't need too much money for that. But I'll share that I also believe every PhD student or every higher degree research student at a university should spend at least a couple or a few weeks at the beginning of their academic journey and also at the end of their academic journey in industry to understand the problems of industry, but also understand how they can translate the research into that. And I'm thinking maybe this reverse pitch idea, maybe we should actually spread it to other locations as well. We're out of time. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in thanking Mikołaj, Jovan, Sylvia, and Aloisy for this fantastic, and also Eric, who left us early in spirit. Please join me in thanking them for this wonderful conversation.